And Russia has fired off a new long-range missile test. Russia's defense ministry says the new intercontinental ballistic missile has the biggest hitting range in the world. The move comes as Russia also ramps up its offensive in eastern Ukraine. James Longman is in Ukraine with the latest.
This morning, as Russia's grip on Mariupol tightens, Ukrainian forces are holding on. They're dug in at their stronghold at the Azovstal steel plant. Russian President Vladimir Putin declaring victory there, announcing a halt to the Russian assault on the compound in an effort, he says, to save the lives of Russian soldiers. But he told his troops to seal off the plant. Officials think 120,000 civilians are still trapped in the city. President Zelensky says that without the necessary arms, they'll be unable to break the Russian siege. But he offered an exchange for those trapped in Mariupol, saying we are open to different formats of exchange for our people, for Russian people, Russian military that they have left behind. The US Secretary of State warning the atrocities in the city could be worse than the horrors seen in Bucha after Russians withdrew from that area.
We can only anticipate that this tide also at some point recedes from Mariupol. We're going to see far worse, if that's possible to imagine.
President Biden huddling with his top military officials, touting US and NATO efforts to supply arms to the Ukrainian forces.
Weapons and ammunition are flowing in daily, and we're seeing just how vital our alliances and partnerships are around the world.
But the fighting in Ukraine is intensifying. With the new Russian offensive into the east, the front line now stretches over 300 miles.
James, thanks. I know James Longman joins me live now from Zaporizhzhia, Ukraine. James, I had said before that you were in Dnipro. I know you were in there. You were there earlier, and we're hearing now that there was an explosion near your area this morning. Can you tell us what happened and what it's like there now?
Well, there were two strikes just outside of the city centre. We actually heard one of them here. Now, we've been seeing this happen. We were in Dnipro. There were strikes there. Obviously, we've seen strikes in places like Kyiv and Lviv. It's just, you know, Russia does this continuously. It's been doing it continuously throughout this invasion, trying, first of all, to hit what they consider to be military installations, but also just kind of trying to terrorise the whole of this country. I don't know if you can hear there. That is another air siren gone up because this is an area, again, we're not far from where this is one of the major cities which is quite closest to Russia's new eastern front. And we're here because we're waiting for more people to come out, hopefully from the city of Mariupol. These buses that you can see behind me, buses like these that have been waiting for days to get people out. 120,000 civilians are thought still inside that city. We have been in this car park for the last few days watching some of the civilians get out, but in private cars. They've just been doing anything they can to try to get out, driving out. We've seen these cars turn up with the word children written on the side on their windows to try to give them safe passage, because on the way out, they've got to go through 15, 20 Russian checkpoints, and every single one of them is completely terrifying. So until now, a lot of people have been able to get out by private means, but these organized humanitarian corridors, which are brokered between the Russians and the Ukrainians, they have been failing up until recently. But we do understand, hopefully, in the next, maybe the next hour, there could be buses turning up here with people out of Mariupol. But of course, for those people, it's desperately sad. Yes, they're out of the danger, but they're leaving their homes behind. And in Mariupol's case, that's a city that Russia wants to permanently occupy. So it's not a question of them getting out of the way of war and then returning when the war is gone. They will likely never go home, Diane.
It's unimaginable to be in that circumstance, James. And now we're also hearing about this new intercontinental ballistic missile test. Russia says that this has the biggest hitting range in the world. How significant is it for the Russian ministry to come out and say that this was a successful test?
Well, I think the timing of this is all you really need to know, Diane, because I think, you know, Russia's invasion has done two things. It's destroyed much of Ukraine, but it's also partially destroyed Russia's reputation as a great military power. 50-some days into this invasion, they still have yet to fully occupy any major city in this country. They're on the brink of doing it in Mariupol, but that's not even in the top 10 largest cities in this country. Just think back all that time ago when we were talking about this invasion. They thought they'd take Kyiv, the capital, in a matter of days. This has been a failure militarily for Russia. Now, we should say that this is ahead of what we understand is going to be their second phase. It could be, quote-unquote, more successful as they're concerned. But I think this is very much Vladimir Putin showing the world that his is a power to be reckoned with, and not just showing the world, perhaps showing critics inside Russia, in as much as there can be any critics inside Russia of his regime or people maybe doubting his ability. We've seen more and more reports emerging of unrest inside the kind of Putin regime, at just how badly, how much of a catastrophe this war has been for them so far. The numbers of Russian troops that have been lost, the amount of military equipment wasted. And so this intercontinental ballistic test is a way of showing both the world and Russian people that it is still a military power to be reckoned with. Diane?
All right. And James, we heard in your piece that President Zelensky said Ukraine is open to different formats of exchange of our people for Russian people, Russian military that they have left behind. So do you think that Russia will engage with that kind of negotiation?
Yeah, I think that's possible. It's a very shady part of this war, Diane. There have been prisoners of war on both sides. Understood something like 700 Ukrainian soldiers, for instance, have been taken by the Russians, any number of Russian soldiers on the Ukrainian side. There are also civilians as part of this, but there's questions about whether or not you can trade a civilian for a soldier. But that very well might be what Russia considers. There's also Viktor Medvedchuk in all this. He's a well-known Ukrainian politician, but an ally of Vladimir Putin's, a Ukrainian oligarch. He has been taken by the Ukrainians on his way, allegedly, out of the country to flee to Russia. He is an incredibly valuable asset to the Ukrainians in any negotiation, and it might be that he is given up in order to get some of these civilians out of Mariupol. But this is all very, very shady. It all happens in the shadows, and so it's very difficult to really know any of this for sure.
And on Mariupol, James, Putin now says that he will blockade the steel plant that Ukrainian forces are holding on to there, so that, quote, not even a fly can get through. How does that change things there, and how long can Ukrainians there hold out?
I think at this point it's not really a question of whether or not Russia will take Mariupol. It's about when they can fully say they've taken it. I mean, Vladimir Putin has already said he's kind of announced his victory in that city. What we're now waiting to see is whether these civilians can get out of that steel plant itself. There were reports that something like 1,000 civilians were hunkered down in those basements underneath. So that will be the priority of the Ukrainians, getting them out. Diane?
All right. James Longman in Ukraine. James, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.